This segment of Deer and Deer Hunting is brought to you by Redneck Blinds. The more you know about deer, and specifically the deer on your property, the better deer hunter you're going to be. Nutrition, buck-to-doe ratios, and cover all play a part.
Whitetail deer are fascinating, not just because they're majestic, but how they live on the landscape. And how they live on the landscape is rooted in their family dynamics, specifically in dispersal behavior.
Knowing deer dispersal patterns can explain why deer are where they are. What's dispersal? It's all about nature's science.
So what is this dispersion factor all about? Why are whitetail deer dispersing? Why are they leaving their homelands? Well, Mother Nature, she's kind of in control here.
Today we're going to dive more deeply into that topic.
What is deer dispersal? It's a big word that has to do with a doe's inner clock. It's the time she pushes her buck fawn away. She doesn't want him around, and it's time for him to move on.
Whitetail dispersal is the deer herd's way of keeping order of itself. Deer will disperse anywhere from 1 mile to 5 miles from where they're born, and there's a lot of rhyme and reason for this behavior.
So what is this dispersion factor all about? Why are whitetail deer dispersing? Why are they leaving their homelands? Well, Mother Nature, she's kind of in control here. And what she does is she wants the deer to disperse. That minimizes inbreeding and it maximizes potential for all properties. It spreads deer out so they can have their own home territories and there's not too many deer using an area, over browsing it, spreading the genetic makeup around, and helping you as a property manager, because your property may not have big bucks today, but in 2 or 3 years, that dispersion factor, it could bring it all together for you.
Males always are trying to be the alpha in any animal society, whether we're talking about chickens or turkeys or ducks or fox or coyotes. Deer are no different. That male is trying to find his way in the world, so to speak. And what happens with whitetail bucks is they're going to congregate when they're younger and then disperse from that natal range, that birth range. And basically what happens here is survival of the fittest. The strongest, most dominant bucks are going to occupy the best habitat for most of the year. That changes during the rut, but let's focus on most of the year. A buck is going to basically disperse anywhere from 1 mile to 5 miles. We found that out through research from his birth range. There's a lot of things that come into play here, and you'd be surprised that it's more linked to the maternal factors, the female factors, than it is the male factors. And what happens here is it's when we talk about social stress in the deer herd. In the deer herd, again, like with any other animal species, the female is the driving force. Whitetail does occupy smaller home ranges, therefore they're going to occupy the better part of the habitat. And that mother, if she has 2 fawns, and let's say one's a buck and one's a doe, that doe fawn is going to stay with her for a much longer period of time. And in fact, that doe fawn is not going to stray far from that mother's home range throughout her life. She's going to live in a proximity very close to where she was born. A buck, on the other hand, is going to get social pressure from not only his mother, but his grandmother, his aunts, those maternally linked females to his place in the pecking order, and they're going to push him out of his natal range relatively early.
Well, say you're hunting a property next to 2 or 3 other good managed properties and you're seeing big bucks over there. Well, hang on. That dispersion from the properties around you may bring some of those younger deer in, 1 and 2 year olds, and those deer may turn out to be some jumbos. And those does, since they produce most of the genetic makeup of what a buck is going to be, and they disperse onto your property, it could all turn out to be a great opportunity for you to start managing a property and benefit from that dispersion.
Land of Whitetail is brought to you by $1 Million Buck Bash, powered by Apex Competitions. Hunt, compete, win. Outdoor Edges game processing sets to do it yourself and save. Redneck Blinds, the best hunting blinds on the planet. Cuddyback, Cuddy Link, 24 cameras, 1 cell plan, $10 a month. And by Hunt Stand, the #1 hunting app in the country. For hunting, shooting, camping, fishing gear, and more, go to sportsmansguide.com. They sell all the top brands in the industry at unbeatable prices. For everything you need to outfit your passion for a lot less, go to sportsmansguide.com.
There are many things a deer hunter can do to help understand deer. Food plots, cutting back cameras, spending time on the land. But there are other factors that are left to Mother Nature. Deer dispersal is one of those factors.
The cause of dispersal is essentially the mother, or that doe tends to push that buck fawn away, or that yearling buck away. She doesn't want him around, she's not social with him, and so there becomes increased pressure for him to disperse to a new area.
Is there anything a hunter can do to affect or control this?
You know, we try to control things a lot as deer hunters. We try to tip the odds in our favor no matter what we're doing, whether it's managing land or managing deer herds or which deer should we shoot. Is there anything that you can do to affect dispersal patterns? How far a buck's going to disperse from his home range? How far a doe's going to disperse from her home range?
A hunter can actually reduce rates of dispersal, and we do it all the time, through antlerless harvest. Anytime that you go out and you harvest a female, you're essentially orphaning a fawn, if that doe does have fawns. And it's been shown that this has an impact on those young bucks, that there's a higher percentage of those young bucks actually stay in their natal range than would normally be found. So when you increase doe harvest rates, what you actually do is you decrease the number of young bucks that are emigrating off of a property.
He's going to stay closer to his home range because he doesn't have those life experiences yet. He hasn't been really taught about the various parts of the topography. He's not really sure where to go. He's going to stay closer to that home range, but by the time he hits 2, he's going to be gone. So how does that help you as a hunter? Not much. You're going to keep him around a little bit longer, but for the most part, for all intents and purposes, there's not a lot you can do to affect his long-term plans.
So what happens if a whitetail buck is orphaned during that first autumn? Finds himself alone. Will he disperse right away, or will he wait till his second year? Really, I don't care if he's a 1.5-year-old, a yearling, or a 2.5-year-old. He will disperse if there's competition there. If there's mature deer, a lot of deer around, and he can see that he's just not going to get his own niche area, he'll disperse. And that all benefits everyone for hunting. That dispersion, again, it's Mother Nature's way of taking care of too many deer, no inbreeding, and helping you out to manage your property, because there's always this odd inflow coming in. It also helps balance out any of the browsing and using too much of the cover and crops that you have on your property. Plus, it helps spread genetics all over. Big bucks that are 2, 3, 4, 10 miles away may have fawns And those doe fawns and buck fawns and eventually yearlings could disperse onto your property and grow up to be big deer. And again, spread that genetic influence throughout. So dispersion, don't worry about it. If you got deer coming and going, that's Mother Nature taking care of us all.
Coming up next, deer dispersal patterns means as much on your property as they do in meccas like Illinois, where we're headed next.
Last sit, last day, and that's a beautiful doe we can take home.
Usually a late fall trip to Illinois means the quest is on for a monster buck. Deer and deer hunting editor Dan Schmidt has had many successful hits in Illinois, but on this trip, he has a different agenda.
So we talked about dispersal. That might give you a little bit of an idea on how it works in the deer herd. You know, a really good example was this gun hunt in Illinois with Steve Bartilla. This property that Steve manages is prototypical, basically the best example that you can get for deer of all age classes living on a relatively large piece of land. I mean, we're talking thousands of acres here, so we're talking in square miles. So you're getting a case study of how these deer interact with each other socially and how they interact from a dispersal standpoint. We went there to hunt what we call a management buck. Now these bucks that we're hunting down there, fantasy land, older bucks, those ones that we're targeting, we're talking 5, 6-year-old bucks, sometimes even older than that. Some bucks that have narrowed their core ranges to a specific spot within those couple square miles. It didn't work out. In the cards, it just didn't work out for us on this hunt. We did not see a buck of that specific category that we could target. So what's the next option? Plenty of doe tags, and I'm always happy to oblige with that. Now here is an example of how you can use dispersal behavior to your benefit when you're hunting does. And I always say this, it's with any quality deer management program, any just sensible deer management program, when you take out antlerless deer, you want to select, if possible, if you're hunting a large property, individuals from different age classes. Great day, very blessed. Here, I shot 3 does on this trip. It was an awesome trip, a lot of fun, made a lot of venison, and it was very productive from that aspect. But instead of just running out and shooting the first 3 does that I saw, we said, you know what, let's try to spread this across the age classes, because that is going to help how the rest of those does live on that landscape. But what happened here was we took out a very fully mature doe. She was 4 or 5 years old. That was the first one. The second one was a 3-year-old doe, and the last one was a yearling doe. And you're gonna ask me, why do you do that? Well, with doe herds, what we know through dispersal is those older does, like I said, they're gonna occupy, they're basically get the high rent areas. They're gonna take the best spots.
It's gun season here and these deer are still running. But I'm gonna lock and load and sit back in and see what happens. But we know we heard her crash right down here by the creek. She's done.
So when you get down to those younger deer, the last deer that I shoot is a yearling doe. She's out by herself. Very prototypical in a November situation. You've got not only young bucks, when I'm talking young bucks, buck fawns, and even yearling bucks, and you have young does, yearling does, looking for their place in life, so to speak. They're going to be doing a lot of cruising. They're going to be encountering other deer, and they're trying to find their spot, their place to rent on that landscape for the most part of the year. Great situation here. We have the doe come in, we can identify her, we can pretty much get a good age on her, and then we can get to work and put some meat on the ground. Last sit, last day, and that's a beautiful doe we can take home. Yes. The more you know about deer, the better deer hunter you're going to be. Now, some of that stuff that you learn is not going to be a tactic or a trick or something that's going to put that deer within bow range of you. The things you're going to learn are things like deer dispersal. And the more you know about deer dispersal, the more you're going to know how those deer specifically live on the land that you're hunting, which is going to eventually make you a better deer hunter.
Up next, the right broadhead for the job and being more than ready when you head to the field this fall.
Land of Whitetail is brought to you by Easton. Get armed and deadly with Easton FMJ arrows. Scent Killer Gold with Hunt Dry Technology Plus. Apply it, dry it, and go hunt. 10-point crossbow technologies. There is no substitute. Sever Broadheads. Straight through it. And by Exodus Broadheads by Quality Archery Designs. American made tough. If you can break it, we'll replace it. For hunting, shooting, camping, fishing gear, and more, go to sportsmansguide.com. They sell all the top brands in the industry at unbeatable prices. For everything you need to outfit your passion for a lot less, go to sportsmansguide.com. Sever Broadheads. I've been using them for several years. You probably know that. I really like them. Number one, they're built well. Number two, they're really sharp. And number three, they cut really big holes. Now they offer 3 different ones here. And a question that I get a lot is, which one should I use? They have 1.5, 1.7, and 2.1. What that means is the cutting width of that broadhead. One thing to be aware of with these broadheads, even though it says 1.5, 1.7, or 2.1, that broadhead almost hyperextends when it hits. They call it a slap cut. When that broadhead hits and those blades slide back, they don't spring back like a normal mechanical broadhead from the years gone by. These are high-tech broadheads. That slap cut opens up that hide even bigger. So on this 2.1, I've had entry-exit wounds that are pushing 3 inches, in some cases more, depending upon the angle of the deer. So a very large cutting diameter. Which one should I use? Crossbow hunting, bow hunting. For me, it really depends on the speed of the bow or the crossbow that I'm shooting. That's a big deal. The 2.1 is going to cover you if you're shooting a lot of weight, 60, 70 pounds on a compound bow or a crossbow. It's going to create a large cutting diameter. The 1.7, obviously a little bit smaller cutting diameter. This is a little bit more stout. A lot of crossbow hunters like this because of that stoutness. The ferrule is really solid. It's really good for crossbows and high-speed compounds. The 1.5 inch. Now this one is, again, it's a smaller ferrule. It's a smaller cutting diameter. What is this good for? A lot of guys like it for long-range shooting. Some of the guys that shoot a lot of high-weight compounds, they like this for antelope hunting, for long-range deer hunting. It's also a good broadhead for low-poundage bow hunters. Check your state regulations. Some states, I know where I'm from, you can shoot as low as 30 pounds of draw weight. Some states it's 40 pounds. This broadhead is good for those lower weights because it's a smaller entry wound. There's not as much going on there when that broadhead hits. If you're shooting 30 pounds and you're trying to shoot a 2-inch cut broadhead, it's going to be slowed down dramatically when that hits the animal.
Got him! Yes! Right there. We got him. We got him.
As with anything with bow hunting, it's all about preference. Your broadhead style and especially your broadhead construction. What I would recommend, going with a highly constructed broadhead that's razor sharp and that cuts big holes. It's going to make for really efficient hunting.
Hey, it's range day. When you go to the range in the off season or this summer, make sure your rifle is set up just the same way you're gonna take it into the field this hunting season. Hey, let's just start out with ammunition. Use the same ammunition you're going to use hunting as when you're sighting in at the range. I've chosen Hornady's Outfitter. Why? Well, I hunt in extreme conditions. Sealed primer, sealed mouth case, and the GMX bullet, which expands at any velocity and has 95% retention weight. That's the type of stuff I want in the field with me. But a few other things you need to consider. If you're gonna hunt, use a bipod. Have that bipod on. Now a bipod's not supposed to change the pressure of the stock and the barrel when you mount it, but why risk it? Have it on when you're out there sighting in. If you like an ammo pouch on here as a cheek piece, have that on when you sight in. You don't want it to change your alignment by adding it in later. That could cause a miss. And one of the other things I like are scope covers. These flip up scope covers, have them on as well. You never know, it could just change a slight amount of eye relief that could make you miss a shot and not find that deer when it's critical. All of these things put together, they should be on when you're sighting in so you don't miss a buck later during the hunting season.